Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to use the ultimate trucker bookkeeping template that I sell on Etsy. So let me show you all the variation that I sell on Etsy. So in this video I'm going to show you how to use the ultimate trucker template because it has all the features available, and these are all the variations that I sell. So the ultimate has all the feature, and then the standard has the least feature. So if you're someone who don't need like a dashboard or a load search, then the standard would work for you. So these are all pretty much work the same way, and so if you purchase any of this item that I sell on Etsy, they work the same way. Just the standard don't have a dashboard, and then it doesn't have a load search, but everything else should work completely the same. Alright, so let's go back and then I'll show you how it works. So before I start, I just want to say that this is not financial advice. This is for informational purposes only. So if you purchase this template on Etsy, it will come with a Google Sheet template and an Excel template, so you can use it in both platforms. And I'm showing you this on Google Sheet. And when you purchase this template, the ultimate version, it will come with 11 tabs. So we'll go over each of the tab before we'll do 2 examples, so you can see how all this information flow to the profit and loss statement, and how you can record each transaction, each revenue and expense for each load, and also if you have business expense, you can record it here as well, and then all those information will be captured in the profit and loss statement. So the very first tab, which is what you should be working on, is the income and expense setup tab. This is where you should spend your time first to set up all your information. And then after you set up that information, then you can go to the load setup, where you set up all your load information and then add in the required load ID or business expense. And then from there, you can associate each income or expense to that load. So after you set up the load, then you can log in your income, and you can associate that load to all the incomes that you have here. So this is where you log all of your income information, and then also the reimbursement or the cash that you receive for reimbursement items. And then expense log is where you go and you would record all your expenses to that load. And then the miles and fuel by state log is where you record all your travel for each of the state, and how much fuel that you spend in each state, and how much those fuel cost, and also the fuel tax per gallon as well. So with this template, this version, you have to record all of your truck travel or your load travel by each state. The reason why it works this way is because this template is meant to also help you in IFTA reporting, so that you can tell which state you've traveled to, and how many miles you travel in that state, and how much fuel you purchase in that state, and how much fuel you use in that state. And the neat thing about this template is that it has this other tab where it would summarize all the miles that you travel in each state, all the fuels that you purchase in the state, and also how much you paid for those fuel, and then the average fuel price in each state as well. Okay, and then the next tab is the profit and loss statement. So after you input all this data, this template will automatically grab those data and build out the profit and loss statement for you. Here you can see that there's the operation information, tells you all the loaded, empty mile, average truck MPG, total gallons used. So this row here, from row 9 to row 16, it comes from the miles and fuel by state log. And then the row 18 to row 28, it comes from the income log. And then the operating expense, which is broken out by fixed and variable costs, it comes from, so row 30 to row 63, it comes from the expense log. And this operation analysis section here is just an analysis of your income and expense. It tells you your net profit, revenue per mile, cost per mile, net profit, loss per mile. And then the reimbursable cost section, row 72 to row 80, it comes from, apart from the income log where you record how much reimbursement you receive, and then also the expense log, how much you paid for all these reimbursable costs, right? And then down here, it gives you the cash inflow and outflow analysis of all the money you receive and all the money going out. Um, and then the comparative financial is basically a reflection of this tab, the profit and loss. It just, in this comparative financial, you can pick any 2 months that you like, or any 2 quarter, and you can compare those 2 months or 2 quarter and see what the dollar change and the percentage change is. Okay, and then the load search basically is you just type in the unique load ID or unique business expense ID, and it should populate and tell you all the analytics related to that load or that business expense. And then last two, we have the weekly dashboard. Here it just gives you the weekly data and daily data of each load or items that you've recorded for that date. And here you can pick, your start date, Saturday or Sunday, which is pretty neat. And then last is the comprehensive dashboard, where you could visualize data based on the month, the quarter, or the year to date. So another thing I want to point out is, because this template, you have to record information that you travel in each state, right? If you don't want to do that, I do sell another template that you don't need to record it by state. Okay, so if you're someone who leases a truck, or you have a GPS on your truck that does all that IFTA reporting and track where you travel in each state, then you don't need to use this template. There's another template that I have where you don't have to record this information. So this template it's very comprehensive. It tries to record all your income and expenses, and also all the state that you travel, so it could help aid you in IFTA reporting. All right. So let's start out with the. So we'll start now, and I'll show you how to do 2 example of recording information, and so you can see the flow of data. So we'll start out now, and the first step in starting out with this template is to work on the first tab, which is the income expense setup tab. So here you can put in your company name. So let's say we call it Sample Company LLC. So once you put that data here in this yellow cell, it will automatically populate to the P&L, right there, and then right there as well. And then you can also set up your revenue and expenses. So for your revenue expenses, you can change any of these highlighted yellow cell here according to your business needs. So you see, you can change this to load pay, or anything that it's relevant to your business. So if I change this to load pay, you're going to see here in the profit and loss, it also changes to load pay, and here it also changes to load pay. So it changes in all the other tabs once you make the change here. So it's a central location for you to update all these description according to your business needs. And then down here you have expenses that are broken out by fixed costs and variable costs. So fixed costs, these are costs that what it is every month, and it's a fixed amount. So for example, if you lease a truck, you can put lease payment here as a description, and it's fixed because every month you have to pay, for example, $1,000 a month. So that is a fixed cost. And variable costs are costs that changes every month, or sometimes you don't even have those costs. So for example, if you're purchasing office supplies, right, you might need office supplies in January, so you purchase a bunch of office supplies, but you might not need that in February, right? You don't need to purchase office supplies in February. So this is a variable cost. It only happens, once in a while, or something unpredictable. So you put in variable costs. I put in variable costs here. And then reimbursable costs are costs that you would receive the money back. So for example, if the client is paying you for hotel and food, lodging and food, right, you need to pay it first, and then you give them a receipt, and then they'll reimburse you. So these are reimbursable costs. So all these work the same way. You can make the changes, and then you can say lodging here, and then it also changes on the profit and loss as well, right? So all this whatever description that you change on the setup tab, it change throughout the other tab. Okay. So another thing I want to mention is please ensure that all your description here are unique, because there is a formula in this template that looks at the text. So all the text needs to be unique. Otherwise, it will not know which one to pick up. Okay. So if you need to have two load pay, so just put load pay 1 and load pay 2. If you need to have two of the same that it's almost the same. Okay. You have to put two descriptions that's the same. Just put load pay 1 and load pay 2. So so once you're happy with this setup and you ensure that all the description are unique, then you can move on to the load setup. So for example, let's say I have a load in 2025 and this is optional. So I'll set up the data here. 55, and here this column is very important. This is how the template know which ID to associate with which income and expense. So ensure that all your load number is unique. Okay, so I'll put load 1. Let's put sample logistics. Okay, so let's see, Portland, Oregon. Oops. And then this is Seattle, Washington, and delivery date, let's say 1/2/2025. So it asks you delivery status here. So maybe this one is, maybe I'll just say completed. Expected miles, so I expect to go 300 for loaded. MT maybe 10, so I have 310 total. Expected truck average MPG is 10. And then expected average fuel cost per gallon, so I'll say 350. So here the gray cells, it automatically does the calculation for you or populate the data. So you only need to enter in data into the white cell. Okay, so don't delete the gray cell or make changes to it. So let's say I expect $3,000 for this load, and my expected expense, let's say 600, so I expect to make $2,400 in profit. So in column V, W, and X, this will automatically populate and pull the data based on the unique load identifier once you input the income and the expense for that load. Okay. So right now we already set up that load, and now we can go to the income tab. So in the income tab, here's where you record how much money you receive for that load. So let's say on 1/3, the next day, I receive income for this load. So then here you have to pick on column D which load it is. So it's load 1, and let's say I made $3,000 for the load pay, and I made another 500 on fuel surcharge, and let's say I got $100 in reimbursement for lodging or food. So I want to show you an example. So if you set up more loads, so if you have load 2 here, it will be part of the drop down menu, right? So the more load you add, the more it will pop up in the drop down menu, and then you can associate what income or expenses that you receive for that load. Okay, so I'll just delete this real quick. Okay, so we recorded all the income for that load, and also I just want to show you real quick, since we recorded the income here, you can see over here it kind of populate, right? It showed that you received $3,600 for this load, which is what we did. We have $3,600 in inflow. So you receive $3,500 in income, but you receive another $100 in reimbursement. So total cash that you receive altogether is $3,600. And the expense, here we can go and put as much expense as we want. So let's say for load 1, this is how much we incurred. Let's say insurance. So if you pick insurance, it automatically know that it's a fixed cost category, because on this setup here, you put insurance under fixed cost. So it knows automatically that is a fixed cost category. Okay, so let's say we paid $50 for insurance, and you can log as much business or load expense as you need. 2025 here, and we'll do another one. Okay, So all of this expense are for load 1. So then if we do fuel cost, it knows automatically it's a variable cost because we put the fuel cost under variable right there. And then let's say we do another one for reimbursement. So communication is reimbursable cost. So let's say we do 300 and then we do another $100 for reimbursable cost. Okay. So now we need to come here and log for the miles fuel by state log. So let's log this real quick to 2025. So here you need to log all your travel by state. So in the load setup for load 1, we said that we're going from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. So right here, let's say it's Jane Doe, truck number, I don't know, just make it up 55. And so you can put your starting odometer if you want, ending odometer. Sorry, I need to pick this load here. You need to associate with the load and which state. So we're going from Oregon, right? So pick your load number, then the state, the abbreviation will automatically pop up. And then you can put the starting and ending odometer if you like. So here is where you record the actual loaded miles for that state. So let's say here we actually want 250 and then we have 10 and then fuel type, let's say it's diesel, and then number of total gallons purchased. Let's say we purchased 30 gallons here. The price per gallon is, I don't know, maybe $3.60. And then here how many gallons you use in the state. So let's say you use 25. So if you use 25 gallons, then you have 5 gallons of unused in Oregon. So when IFTA reporting come, you might get a credit back for this 5 gallons that you didn't use in Oregon that you purchased, right? You purchased 30, but you only use 25, so you have 5 gallons left over. So let's say that the tax is like 13 cents. So from here, we're recording by where we're bringing this load, right? So we're starting in Oregon, and then also on the same date we're also went to Seattle, Washington. Oh, so should say doe, not die. Okay, so same thing here. And then load 1. So the next part is Washington, so we have to travel through Washington to get to Seattle. So let's say we got another 50 miles. So total, we traveled 310 miles, and let's say we bought more diesel here. And then let's say we purchased 10 gallon and the price is $4. And here, let's say we use 10 gallons, so you use all the gallons that you have here, and let's say it's 14 cents here. So once you record all this information, it will flow through a profit and loss statement. Okay, so once we record that, for the trip, right? Because this trip we are going from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington, and here you're just pretty much breaking it out by state, how much miles you travel in each state. And the nice thing about this, after we record the information, the miles fuel by state log, the fuel mile summary, it summarizes all that data for you by the state. So as you remember, we only record data for Oregon and Washington. So you can see Oregon and Washington, it already populate that data, right? So you can just print this out and see how many miles you travel in each state, how much you spend in each state, how much fuel gallons you purchase. And here the nice thing is that you can come here and kind of filter by year to date. So the year to date and January is the same, right? Because, well, the year to date include January to December, so we pick year to date, so January will be part of it. So if you pick like February, it's not going to show up because we recorded data in January, right? So we recorded January data for Oregon and Washington. Okay, so that's a cool thing about this report. And then here's the profit and loss statement. As you can see, it's already populated. So if you remember, we enter in a load for January. So as you can see, it's already populating this data. So we recorded $3,500 in revenue. So right here, if you look here, see $3,500 we recorded for load 1, right? We recorded 3,000 in load pay and 500 in fuel surcharge. Oops. So right here, so 3,500, and then we recorded $50 in insurance costs, and then variable cost is 300. So total operating expense we recorded was 350. So let's check if that's correct. So fixed and variable are part of operating expense, so that's correct. We recorded 350 in January. So here it tells you, right, what is the operating expense, 350, your net profit, revenue, profit per mile, and all those information. I wanted to go back and explain this as well. So on this piece up here on the operational information section, this information comes from the miles and fuel by state log. So you can see we recorded 300 loaded miles, right? So right here, so we recorded 300, which is correct. It's grabbing that data, and of that, 10 of it is actually empty. Actually, we recorded 310, 300 is loaded, and 10 is empty. So let's take a look. So yes, 310 total, 10 is empty, and 300 is loaded, which is correct. And our average truck MPG is 7.7. So this 7.7 here, it's taking the average of this column here, this column. So 10.4 plus 5 is 15. So if you look at average, 7.7. So that's how it's grabbing the data, or how it's transferring the data over. And it gives you the gallons used, and then your average fuel cost per gallon, and then your average fuel total cost. Okay. And then lastly, the other thing I need to explain is this reimbursable cost. So we paid $100 in communication reimbursement cost, right? Because we logged it here, right? We had $100 of this, like, probably telephone use that the client will pay us back. So of this $100, how much did you get back in reimbursement? So 100, we said that we got $100 in reimbursement. So where's that $100 coming from? It's coming from here, the income, because we log as 100, right? So as you can see here, because you get you paid out 100 and you got reimbursed 100, so your net effect is 0, so you're good, right? So of that you made $3,150 in cash inflow, so you made a profit for that month. But what happens if you receive less than what you paid out for reimbursable costs? So let's say instead of $100 you got $50. So that means that you are in the hole for $50, right? So here it shows you you have $50 less than you should have. So now you only have $3,100 in cash inflow. Okay, so this is how it works, this profit and loss statement. And then the other thing I wanted to show you is that you can change the month as well. So you can change, if you want to start your business, your fiscal year in February, you can start in February, or you can start in June, right? It just moves up. But there's no data for June because we didn't enter any data for June. We only enter data for January. So if you move back to January, you have the data because we enter data for January. The other thing I want to mention is, so if you notice this fuel and mile summary report, and I also put a note here. So if you pick Q1, right? So Q1 is usually understood as January, February, March. But if you change this, let's say your you change the starting month on this report on the profit and loss to June. So if you change this to June, your first quarter is actually not January, February, March. It's going to be June, July, August. And then in the miles and fuel summary log, so if you go and you pick Q1, you're not going to see any data here, right? Because now Q1 matches whatever is on the profit and loss statement. So Q1 is understood as June, July, August. Okay, so that's why you didn't see any data that we enter in for January. So just so I guess in summary, whatever the Q1 is in the drop down menu matches the Q1 here. Okay, so if you have a fiscal year that begins as a calendar year as January, then your quarterly months are the same: January, February, March. It's a normal quarter, right? And then here you change it to quarter one. You're gonna see January as part of the data being pulled because we entered January data. Okay, so I hope that makes sense and I'm not causing any confusion. Your quarter here just matches whatever your quarter here is. Okay, and then the next tab here is just the comparative financial statement. So here you can compare any 2 months. So because we enter in January data, it's populated, right? And you can see the ending result, the ending net cash inflow outflow is 3100, and here you also have for January 3100, so it matches. So as you enter more data, you can compare any 2 months. And I also want to point out is that the way this works is like it's taking column C minus column D, so just be aware of that direction, because sometimes you can do it from column D minus column C. So that's why you should start this column C as the most current month. So you do like March compared to February, or you can do Q2 versus Q1. So basically it's just a comparative report that shows you the dollar change and the percentage change. And lastly, I want to show you this load search here. So this load search tab, you just input in the load number. So let's put in the load number. I think we have load 1. So you put in load 1, it will automatically populate the analytics for that load. So it'll give you all the load information, the operating trucking information, the income, the variable fixed cost expenses, reimbursable expenses, the operation analysis, and also it gives you all the data for that, the expected and actual load information for that load as well, and it shows you all the state that you travel, which is correct, right? Because for load 1 we travel to Oregon and Washington, so it just shows the 2 state that we input in. Okay, and then lastly is the weekly dashboard, or actually second to the last. So here you can it's pretty self-explanatory, because you can just pick the year that you want to look, the month that you want, and then which month or which date you want to start. So if you start Monday, this here is going to coincide with that. So you do Monday, it matches, right? You turn Sunday, it changes. And then you can pick, okay, which week you want to look at. You want a week at the second week. We didn't put any data for second week, so that's why everything is 0. But we put in data for week 1, so you see 12/29. So week 1 of January is from 12/29/2024 to 1/4/2025. So you can see the week date here matches. So we put data on to 1/2/2025. That's why you have all these data here. So this is just visual data on the information you input. And then the last one is the comprehensive dashboard, which shows you all the, you can pick the year, and then from there you can pick which month you want to look at, or you want to look at the annual report, or you want to look at the quarter by the month. So it just, again, visual data of the month, the year, and the quarter. Okay, so that's pretty much the flow of information, how this template works. So one more example I want to show you is, and I get this question quite often, is like, okay, but how do I record a business expense that's not related to a load? So for example, if you are leasing a truck, right, and you need to pay a monthly payment for that lease, how would you record it? Because it's not part of any specific load, it's more like a general expense. And also, what if you bought office supplies, right? It's not related to a specific load, but it is a general expense for all of your business. So how would you record it so it can go into the financial statement? So what you can do is you can set that up in the load setup so that it will be part of the drop down menu on the expense. Right? So you can put a date here. So I'll just put a date on when I set that up. So you can put business expense, or you can do business income and expense if you get, other types of income that is not specific to a load, and you can put it like this, right? Business income and expense, or you can just put business expense. So for now, because I'm just recording an expense, so I'll just put business expense. So you just need to put one of that unique identifier in column F, so it will be part of a drop down menu. You don't need to fill out any other information because, again, this is just an expense that is not related to any load. So how would you record this, right? I'm recording a lease payment. So what you can do is you can just record it every month, 25, and then we'll do one for February and March as well. Oh, and forgot, this is on Google Sheets, so you can double click and then the mini calendar will pop up. But if you're using this in Excel, you will not have this feature. You have to manually type it. Okay, so let's say we'll do another one in March. So I'll do this to see when we set up the business expense, it will be part of a drop down menu, so we can associate the expense with that type of, a general expense instead of a load. So here I'm just putting business expense for all these because I'm logging these as a lease payment. All right, I'm logging this as lease payment, and then lease payment, so we know automatically, or it knows automatically, is a fixed cost. So every month I'm putting in $1,000 I have to pay for my truck. Okay, so what if I have office supplies? Same thing. You just do business expense, and then you put office supplies, or any other expense that you have, right? Let's say I spent $350 for this. So now when we go to the profit and loss statement, you see it. So we recorded $1,000 for lease payment, right? For January, February, March, and you can see here, it's all populated here. January, February, March, it shows up. And then we recorded $350 for office supplies. You can see here, right? So right now this information is negative because we don't have any income. We only log the expenses. But this report, the wonder of this is not only it's organizing data or information just for a load, it also organized data for business expense as well. So all of your income, all your cash coming in from your trucking operation, plus your expenses, your load expense or other business expense, you can record it, and this file will incorporate all that information. So it tells you all the inflow and outflow that you receive for the year, as long as you record it, right? So, and then one last thing I want to mention is that if you are recording your travel by state, right, your load by state, and you put so let's say you see here that we purchased 30 gallon, and each of that gallon is $3.60, and the total fuel cost is $108, automatically populate. But that 108 is not going to automatically flow to the profit and loss statement. Okay, so the profit and loss statement, the expense, it gets it from the expense log. So make sure that if you have any fuel costs, you must record that fuel cost in the expense log. This mile by fuel and by state log here, this data only goes up here on the operation information. It's for informational purposes, right? It's not part of your P&L. Okay, so just to summarize, if you have any fuel costs that you paid for in any state, make sure that you record it in the expense log. Okay, that way it could move, it could be grabbed in the financial. So for example, right, if we record for 3/1/2025, and let's say you spend let's do 3/1. can't type today. So for load 1, and we're doing fuel cost, and we do $500. You're going to see this $500 in the fuel cost in March. So in March, $500 in fuel cost. See, it comes here. So that data here on the expense, on the variable cost, it comes from the expense log. It does not come from here. So the reason why I'm explaining this is because I don't want you to get confused and say, oh, I already record all my fuel expenses, so this template should automatically pick it up. The fuel expense should be recorded here, and also for this template here, the miles fuel by state log is for informational purposes, is for IFTA reporting. So any expense that you have related to your load, make sure you record it in the expense log. Okay, so let me show you an example of a template that is all filled out. So this is a template I have all filled out, and it's just a mock-up that I created. And let me show you how it looks with all the data inputted in it. Right, so here is the load setup, where I set up all my load, and then the income, I added all my income. You can add as much income data as you need. You just need to keep adding the date and then the load information, right? The expense log, I add in as much data. I did it for a whole year, from January to December, and these are all like example information. And here I log all of the state that I travel to for each load. And the mile summary report, it just basically gave me a summary of all the state that I traveled to. So as you can see, like when I pick from the drop down, it tells me, right? You can see the data change right here. So if I do year to date, it'll tell me all the state that I travel for the whole entire year. So all the state, all the miles that I traveled, all the gallons that I purchased in each of those states, and all the gallons that I used, all the net tax gallons that I also have, and then the average fuel tax per gallon, and then average fuel price in the state, and then the fuel cost that I paid in that state. And then the profit and loss, you can see it's all populated right here. All right, you see. And then the comparative statement, so let me show you. So now we have more data. I can show you how it works. So for example, if I pick 2 months, I pick February and January, you can see it shows me the dollar change and the percentage change, right? You can pick any month or any quarter that you want, Q2 and Q1, right? And then the load search, you can just search any load that you want. So for example, we can do a business expense. Let me look at the load. What are the load example? Load setup. Oh, we don't have a business expense. But let's look at one of the loads. So load 2 right here. So if I do 002, right, right there, it will just populate the data according to the load 2. Okay. And then the weekly dashboard, again, self-explanatory. You just choose what month, what year, what date, what week you want to look at. Same thing here. All right. One last thing I want to show you is that so we have business expense set up here on the what is it called, on the load setup tab. So if we go to load search, we can also put this exact identifier in load search, and it should just show up all the business expense as well, right? So this is good if you want just to see all your general business expense instead of a load. So you can see here, it just populate basically all the expense data, because we only enter in expenses. So total that we've entered for the business expense was $3,350. So we enter in $3,000 for lease payment, and then $350 for office supplies. So it just shows that data because that's all the data we've entered in for business expense, right? So another answer to a question that I get often for this template is that can I use this template for multiple years? And the answer is absolutely. So if you remember in this template, we've been entering data for 2025. So 2026 come, how would it work? So this template is meant to work until the year 2041. So you can see on the year drop down, it goes to 2041. So if 2026 come, what happened is you just log data for the income expense. So you go to this income, you can log the 2026 data right here. So let's do this as an example. Find one, so we'll just put an example. We got $8,000 there, and then on 1/20/26 as well. We also have an expense as an example. I'll make this $6,000. So when we pick the year 2026 on this profit and loss statement, it should populate that data that we just entered. So if I pick 2026, you can see the load pay is 8,000 and the insurance is 6,000. So this template is quite dynamic. You can just update the year and it'll pull the data based on the month and the year that you recorded the information, and also the category that you recorded the information. So it's a very dynamic report, and you can use this up until 2041. And another reminder is, if you change the year here, let's say you change it to 2028, so you don't have any data for 2028 because we haven't entered any data for 2028. The comparative financial, the drop down menu, will reflect that as well. Okay, so the drop down menu here matches the profit and loss information here. So I hope that helps. That's all I have for this template. I know it's quite a lot, but it's a very comprehensive template, and I hope that if you purchase this, it could help you with your accounting, to DIY your accounting for a trucking business. I will put the link to purchase this on the description. So if you're interested, check it out. I sell it on Etsy, and if, as a reminder, if you don't like that the way that this template is, you have to record all of your travel by each state, then there's also another option that works exactly like this, where you don't have to log by state. So I'll put that in the description as well. And thank you very much.